Hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking at lesson 4. So I'm really excited because lesson 4 is all about operating in the cloud. What do we expect to learn from lesson 4 as a whole? Well, today we're going to be looking at lesson 4A, B, and C, but the objectives for lesson 4 is we want to be able to know how to relate cloud concepts to technical operations. We want to be able to identify the technical aspects of cloud operations. And we also want to be able to understand, what is DevOps and what does it mean when we're using that sort of framework in the cloud? And then finally, we want to be able to explain the cloud security concerns, measures, and concepts. So we're going to focus on topic 8, which is how do we relate cloud concepts to technical operations? So with the exam objective, this looks at 1.1, which is how do we explain cloud principles? So this again is going back into the foundations of what we learned in lesson 1. So as you know, there are 5 cloud characteristics that are, let me see if everyone remembers, what is the governing body that defines the 5 characteristics for cloud? What are they called? Can anyone put in the chat for me?
Is that NIST?
Yes, it's NIST. I think I don't know who answered then. Could be Francis. Yes, it's NIST. And I see Afi and Ufama also put NIST in the group chat as well. Yes, it's NIST. So as you know, there's 5 characteristics. The first characteristic is on-demand self-service. So this is a creation and management of cloud services that may shift from your IT staff to employees. So this is looking at, sorry, can everyone mute themselves as they come so that it doesn't interrupt the recording? Thank you. So when we're looking at on-demand self-service, this is the creation of management of cloud services, which may shift from IT employees, for example, from IT staff to employees such as developers and so on. So when we're looking at the second characteristics, we're looking at broad network access. So that deals with the internet connection that must be carefully monitored and secured. Then we go into the third characteristic, which is resource pooling. And that is where VMs are viewed as disposable resources that may be provisioned and destroyed rapidly. And then when we're looking at rapid elasticity and looking at how it links to technical operations, is that cloud consumption can change very rapidly as resources are provisioned and destroyed. So there might be an anticipated change to operating expenditures. So for example, you might have a spike in your services at seasonal times of the year, which might change the way in which you use your resources. So you might have to provision more resources or destroy them depending on the demand that you have. And then the final characteristics is measured service. So that's tracking your cloud resource utilization. And this is very, very essential. So when we are looking at the 3 cloud service model, there's 3 types. You have your SaaS, your PaaS, and your IaaS. So when we're starting with SaaS, so SaaS is your software as a service. So deals, when you're thinking about how does technical operations play within a cloud service model, when we're looking at SaaS, it looks like your day-to-day administration of applications. And this is generally offloaded to the cloud service provider, and it's all about how do you patch and how do you upgrade. So for example, when we think about services such as Salesforce, for example, it might be you upgrading the type of service that you want to use by maybe going from bronze to gold or from basic to more premium. And then it's all about patching as well. So it looks at the different ways in which the applications are offloaded. When you're looking at platform as a service, that deals with your day-to-day operations. So your day-to-day administration of platforms. And again, looking at the keyword here for both software and platform is what is the administration of these either platforms or application, and how is it offloaded to the cloud provider? So within your PaaS, your administrators are solely concerned with configurating, but specifically what configurations are specific to your organization. And then finally, you have your infrastructure as a service, which is when we're looking at technical operations. This is when your administrators are no longer concerned with supporting the hardware. So this is when hardware support may include things like drivers, firmwares, physical hardware failure, and etc. So again, I think a recap from things that we've already learned. When we're looking at SaaS, it deals with hosted applications. Examples are your Office 365, your Salesforce, your Gmail. When we're looking at platform as a service, we're looking at two things. The first one is what is your infrastructure software? And the second one is what is your operating systems? And examples of that is when we're looking at infrastructure software is your Oracle, your MySQL, and your Java. When we're looking at things like your operating systems, we're looking at Windows and Linux. Now, when we're looking at around what, infrastructure as a service is more complex because we're dealing with four things. We're dealing with visualization, servers and server hardware, networking, and also what is your data center, electrical and mechanical operations. When we're dealing with virtualization, we're dealing with Xen, VMware, and Hyper-V. When we're dealing with servers and server hardware, we're dealing with servers. What is your CPU? What is the memory? What is the storage? And again, this is a good way to think about when we're talking about cloud storage and things like that, how it can all play into it. And then we're looking at also networking when we're looking at infrastructure as a service, and that is your firewall, your routers, your switches. And then finally, when we're looking at more of the physical side of the operations, it's dealing with what is your power, what is the cooling, and again, what is the physical security. So moving on to deployments. So if you guys remember what the 4 deployments were, first one is private cloud. So what does technical operations look like within a private cloud? This is when your administrators are able to support the organization's private data center. And this also lets you know the importance as well, because with technical operations, I've talked about administrators. Who are your administrators? These are your tech teams, most likely. When we're looking at public cloud, is looking at the day-to-day operations that takes place through a web-based dashboard. So this can include things like monitoring. It can include things like automation, like command line, integration tools, and etc. When we're looking at technical operations, when looking at community cloud, this deals with what is the operational burden that are distributed across these multiple organizations. Because remember, community cloud is when a group of companies have the same goal, so they all pay into a pot to kind of maintain the community cloud. Now, because loads of companies are pouring into a particular cloud, which in this case is community cloud, the operational burden will then be distributed across these organizations. So there might be a representative on each organization who deals with the administration and works with other administrators to manage the operations of the cloud. And then you have your hybrid. This is where, when we're looking at technical operations, it's when the operational structure will be a combination of all the cloud model deployments. So again, picking and choosing. When we look at private, it deals with administrators supporting organizations' private data. When we look at public, it is operation that takes place through web-based dashboards. And what does it include? It includes 4 things: monitoring, automation, command line, integration tools. And then what community cloud, like I said, is when the operational burden is shared, is distributed across different organizations. So, I will now put you guys in groups to focus on this question. So looking at the time, I'm going to give everyone, because I remember last time I was told I didn't give you guys enough time. So for this session, I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes. So everybody will reconvene at 6:25. And then we'll be able to go through. So in your groups, I want you to discuss okay, perfect. I've put you guys in groups and I want you guys to discuss this particular question in your groups and also make sure you have a lead that will be able to kind of share what the group has learned or what the group has discussed. So right now you should get a link that takes you to your breakout room. Do let me know if you guys are having issues. Okay.
Can you put me back in the room, please?
So who's that, Francis?
Can you put me back in the room? I
Yes.
left to take a picture of the message.
Oh, I think you have to. I'm trying
trying.
to see. You should be able to. It's not letting me. It just says you haven't joined. Like you have to click a link.
Yeah,
All right, let me see what I can do. I'll move you to group 1 and then move you back to group 2. Do you see something now? And I see, from Augustina, you guys having issues? Francis, you should be able to see a link that will take you to the room.
I clicked on the link at first to go to the room, but then I came out and oh God.
Okay. For those who are late, I'm trying to see because I'm seeing group 4 hasn't. There's been issues with group 4. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I think some people from group 4 came back. What was the issue?
Yeah, we didn't screenshot the question. So yeah. Chinwe, I've got the question now. I've screenshot it. How do I go back to the room? You just at the bottom where it says
what happened to me.
At the bottom where it says join breakout room, you just click on there and then it just allocates you to where you was before. So you just
Where?
join.
Okay.
The bottom of where?
She said the bottom of the screen, there should be a breakout room which takes you.
I can't find. I'm saying no.
Oh, Sarah, are you having issues, by the way? Christina.
Can't see.
Francis, I don't know. It should be at the bottom. That is what it's saying. If you look at the places for reactions,
Oh, reactions.
something about breakout rooms, and then you can join through there.
Yes, I'm not saying anything. Chat show captions, meeting settings.
So do you see anything about a breakout room?
No.
Okay, I don't know how to to help you, Francis.
I'm just going to wait for them.
Okay, let me put you in the waiting room and then invite you back. Let's see what that does. And let me see if I can. Okay, I've moved you to a different room. Do you see something now, Francis?
No,
Huh?
no, not yet.
Mm, don't know. Osarame and Augustina, I think both of you guys do have to join a room. Unfortunately, if you don't, I might have to remove you for the session today because you guys have to interact.
What sort of thing is this?
Okay, let's see. I don't know, Fran. I don't know what to do to help you.
It's so annoying. I just left to screenshot the picture and then. Oh.
Hmm. So I think there's a thing at the bottom. So do you see anything around caption? No, you can't see. Because I know that at the top where I see my mute video chat remote control, if you put more, you'll see breakout rooms.
I'm seeing chat, apps, show captions, meeting settings, background, whiteboards, disconnect, raise hands. I'm
Do you
not
see,
seeing,
you're not seeing breakout rooms.
no.
Well, the groups only have 2 more minutes.
But
Fortunately. Uh, so don't worry. For the next one, I think what I'll do is give people time to screenshot and then they join. So I'm closing all the rooms now, so everyone should be returning soon. All right, let's see. People should be coming in now. Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So,
Thank you.
no worries. So we're going to do it by groups. I don't know if you guys got to know which group you are on, but I can give you that information. So who will be representing group one? Group one, I believe, was Cassandra, Chinyere, and Ufoma. Does anyone want to go to talk about what they have as an answer?
So for my group, we couldn't actually discuss. Former was trying to make some contribution and every other person was just mute. So I don't know. I will just go ahead to share my idea as regarding what the question is pointing to. So considering the challenge that the developer is facing, my advice would have been that the migration should be broken down into smaller pieces so that it can actually reduce the risk of destruction that is facing in terms of the migration.
Okay, thank you, Chinyere, for that contribution. Ufoma, Cassandra, do you guys have any parts? Anything you want to add to it? Okay, I'll take this as a no. So group two, I know Francis had some issues, but Afia, Kemi, Sade, Zainab, did you guys have any thoughts and answers?
Yes, we did. I think I've been appointed as a spokesperson for our group, very much under duress. But what we said, I think, like, looking at the question, the main issue that he had was not being able to work in the same development environment as his co-workers. So we were talking about with PASS, he would be able to collaborate a lot more smoothly with his co-workers. So which will in turn help with a smoother cloud migration operation, I guess. We also spoke about scalability and how being able to work on PASS typically offers like applications to like handle different workloads, if that makes sense. So it was quite rushed for us as well. So I'm trying to like read my notes at the same time and make sense of it. And we also spoke about how PASS, the platform, like some PASS's platforms provide tools and services for developing, testing and deployment, which would make it easier for him as a developer to have like a smoother working environment as well.
Okay.
That was pretty much what we have, I think. If anyone else wants to add anything for my group, then we're welcome to.
Can I add?
Yeah, feel free to add, Francis.
Okay, so in my own opinion, in my own idea, since I didn't join the discussion, I was thinking that since PASS is like a CPS platform, it's going to be provided in sort of it's going to be like a template. Like it should be, there wouldn't be any need for that. It won't be diversified as it is on premises platform, because it's like it's more like a general template where the things are provisioned identically for a set of service that they offer. So there won't be any bother about being difference in the difference of plots, like the difference it encounters when it's on premises. So it's more like a template that is generic for the same set of process and provisioning or something. I don't know.
Okay, Thank you for your contribution, Francis. And thank you, Seidea, as well. So we're now going to go into group 3, which was Sasha, Susie, Tasha. Does anyone from the group want to share? Does anyone from group 3 want to share?
Sorry. So generally we kind of focused more on just like looking at past characteristics and past in general. Specific to the question, we thought that he had issues with configuring his own workstation and that his dev environment differed a lot from his co-workers. But if looking at the technical operations for PASS, the day-to-day administration of the platforms is uploaded to the CSP, and the administrators only have to worry about configuring things for the organization. So in theory, that would mean that the developer only needs to like focus on maybe 1 or 2 tools rather than having to reconfigure his whole workstation and that being different from his co-workers, because the offload of responsibility onto the CSP and the other administrators would mean it's a bit more standardized across the organization.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sasha. Before I go on to group 4, does anyone else from group 3 want to give an input? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So we're now going to move on to group 3, which was Chinwe, Deborah, Elizabeth, and Ajibola. Does anyone from the team want to share what they discussed?
Okay, I'll say something. I think we had Elizabeth on our group as well, and she did well. We were learning from her because she was just saying something along the lines of it's a platform, and that means there's going to be like functionality for him to be able to do what he needs to do. But in all honesty, we didn't really go far in that discussion. We were just guessing. So yeah, that's what I can add.
No worries. Thank you, Deborah. I mean, the main thing is that you guys attempted, which is always good, and it's a good place to start. So in regards to the answer, I would say the answer is quite varied, but as everyone has highlighted, the fact that it's a past deployment, it means that the developer systems will be configured the same way. So this would be with the same tools, the same software versions. So because of that, the past deployment will remove the day-to-day administrative task that the developer currently spends their time doing, because the platform kind of handles that maintenance aspect and the infrastructure aspect as well. So that is how I would answer this particular question. Now, moving on to the next question. This time, we won't spend time doing it. So I guess it's kind of, what do people think the answer to this is? Remember elasticity, looking at the 5 characteristics.
Sorry, before you go further, I would like you to elaborate on the response, on the answer.
Sorry, let me get I don't know who spoke just now, so sorry. Let me put the participant thing so I can see. So who was that just spoke?
Okay, my name is Chinyere. So I was saying that if you could give a little context to the response, because from what I read from the question, it said it doesn't like the situation, like the experience is basically on the time consuming. So what that means is that it's actually complaining about the time is actually spending in migrating those data. So I don't know if the emphasis is on the facility or what the cloud is offering. I don't know if you could go just explain to me.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, anyway. So he's actually not complaining about the migration process. He's complaining about the time he's currently taking to do the work. That would be different from if he's doing the past platform, if that makes sense. So right now, he's configuring his own workstation. and that is time consuming. That is his day-to-day task. Now he's worried about the migration system, because it's like, if we move on to the cloud, how will that impact my work? How will that impact my day-to-day operations? Now, if we go back to what we discussed with the technical operations, part of it, especially when we're using PaaS, it means that because they're using a PaaS deployment, it means that the systems will all be configured the same way. So he doesn't need to spend that much time configuring his own workstation, because the tools, software versions are all configured the same way, because the cloud service provider is handling that piece of work that he would be normally doing if you're not using a PaaS, if that makes sense. So because of that, the cloud migration actually helps him in the sense that, because the PaaS deals with all the configuration itself, it means that his day-to-day administrative tasks that he currently does by configuring his own workstation, he wouldn't have to do that when they migrate to the platform as a service structure. Rather, he can spend that time doing something else. So in a sense, it's telling developer that actually it's not harming your work. Rather, it's taking away some of the work that you're doing, because the platform would handle that. Exactly, like Afia said, built-in services. Exactly. If we go back to the characteristics of cloud, yes. Does that make sense, Chinyere? Or do you want me to kind of rephrase that in a different way?
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So, going on to the next one, before I move on to the next one, does anyone else need any clarification, or is everyone good? Okay, I think everyone is good. So for the second question is for us to discuss, how does elasticity, think about elasticity when we're looking at the 5 characteristics. How does elasticity in cloud deployments impact your organization on a day-to-day basis? So let's say, you have to think about the scenario as, is your revenue seasonal or steady? And how will these changes impact your organization's day-to-day operations when thinking about elasticity? So maybe a good example to give is, let's say, an e-commerce company, they might have larger demand during Black Friday, for example. How does elasticity in cloud deployment impact this day-to-day within that scenario? So Ufoma says day-to-day cost will change. Does anyone else have, thank you for that, Ufoma. Does anyone else have something that they would like to add before I go into the answers?
Can I, I was thinking about from the auto scaling. So because most cloud providers offer auto scaling, so that's actually a very important, I think is an important elasticity feature, that you don't get to scale up or scale down yourself. It adjusts based on the traffic and the demands it sees it gets. So it's once it's peak period, it's going to auto scale by itself. And another thing is that if you notice a steady demand, like there shouldn't be any point paying for auto scaling again, because you can do like you can have like a reserved future where you now know, like it's like making a stable provision for it. So there's no point overscaling or anything like that. So I think auto scaling and reserving is also a very good concept of elasticity that helps organizations using cloud.
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution, Francis. And I think I'm seeing other people on the chat, so I can get everyone's point across. So Deborah says different department will pay. Elizabeth says elasticity ensures resources are released to adjust for changes in demand and consumption. This can be automatic or manual. And I think it goes back to Francis' point on auto scaling as well. And Sasha says period of peak activity will have more demand. For example, financial business during month end, and let me see the month end, and retail businesses such as Black Friday, etc. So Ufama said there might be peak times during the day too, more purchases from websites in the evening may need fast operations. And Afia said, same as Elizabeth, flexibility. So you guys are pretty much all right. So I would say that when we're comparing kind of cloud elasticity, it's that changing the usage of the cloud based on demand. And I think what I really like with one of the answers that was given was on Elizabeth's point on the resources being adjusted based on demand. So it could be automatic or manual, in the sense that, for example, it could be manual in the case where maybe there was, I don't know, let's say there's a particular viral video that has now increased the sales of a particular good that a business, a e-commerce business has. Now they didn't account for the video to really increase, the spikes in sales so much. And because of that, they might manually then have to adjust based on the spike in demand. On other cases, they might actually do it automatically, or they might plan for it, for example, with things like Black Friday, which would require them to kind of account for, okay, we might have a higher demand in this time period. And I think Ufama also gave a great point about nighttime sometimes, depending on the location, that there might be more sales during the night or more sales during the day, depending on the business type and things like that. So it's all about adjusting based on the demand that you're getting. So the organization will be adjusting based on that demand that they're getting. So that's why it's elastic. So if you think about a rubber band, for example, or balloon, the more air you blow into a balloon, the bigger it gets. The less air, the more it shrinks. So think about the cloud like that. The air being the resources and data needed, and space needed, and cloud storage needed. The more it's needed, it can expand. And then if less is needed, they can shrink and then reduce. Because remember, they're paying per use, which means that it's efficient in a way they're not wasting resources. You're only paying for the amount of cloud that they use, and that might change depending on business needs and demand. So we're now going to go into topic B. So topic B is all about how do we identify technical aspects of cloud operations? So how do we, I think there are 3 different points that it looks at. So the first one is we're looking at 1.2, which is how do you identify cloud networking concepts. 1.3 talks about how to identify cloud storage technologies. 2.3 looks at how to identify important business aspects of vendor relations in cloud adoptions. And then 3.1, we are going to be looking at aspects of operating within the cloud. So we're going to talk about data management. And when we're looking at data management, we're going to look at replication, which involves making copies of data and placing them in different locations. We're going to look at backup and recovery, which looks at the safety of the making a safety copy of your data while the recovery, I would say, is like using copy to restore any lost or corrupted data. Then we have data gravity, which is as data grows, it becomes more challenging as it moves around and tends to attract applications to be closer to it. And then we have locality. So locality, when we look at it, especially in the concept of cloud computing, we're talking about the processing power and how it often is moved closer to where the data resides rather than moving huge amounts of data to the processor. And then we're going to look at data compression, which is like repackaging the data into smaller size so that it occupies less space. And then we have data duplication, which is the process of finding and removing duplicate pieces of data, so storing only one copy and referring back to that single copy when needed. And then finally, capacity on demand, which is all about allowing users to get more storage whenever they need it, but also requiring continuous monitoring to avoid maybe unexpected costs, going back to our concept of elasticity as well. So when we're looking at replication, like I said, replication involves making copies of data and placing them in different locations. So this may provide geo-redundancy as part of a disaster recovery plan, and may also support content delivery networks, so SDNs, by placing data nearer to the consumers. We're going to discuss that last point a little bit more when we're looking at locality. But I would say a real life example of, if you want to kind of understand where does replication, how does it work in real life, is that imagine you have an important document. Instead of keeping just one copy in your office, you make several copies, right? And you store them in your home, in your car, maybe with a friend, different places. So this ensures that if something happens to one location, if something happens to the copy of document in your car, for example, that is okay, because you still have several copies that you've left at home, in the office, with a friend. So at any time you can go and collect those copies, which means that if anything happens, like fire, disaster, to one location, because you already have different locations that you've saved that same copy, you can always retrieve it at any time that you want. Then we have a backup and recovery. So this is, making a safety copy of your data, while recovery is like using copy and paste to restore any lost or corrupted data. So I would say that cloud storage may be used for data backups in this scenario. Backed up and archived data are stored on a slower and less expensive media, while recovery is restoring that data, again, keywords, that is lost, corrupted, or accidentally deleted. So because you have a backup, again, you can always go and retrieve that data whenever needed. Then we have data gravity. So data gravity is all about, if we're looking at definition, it means as data grows, it becomes more challenging to move it around. And because of that, it can tend to attract applications to be closer to it. So when we're looking at data gravity, we're dealing with big data. So this is when large quantities of data make it difficult to move. So it may be harder to move from one cloud service provider to another, or maybe from one type of storage media to another, or from one application to another. For example, when, depending on what form you're feeling, when sometimes you're told to like upload something, they have a max to what size that you're able to upload. Let's say you're trying to upload a picture, for example, in an email, you want to attach it to an email. If it's over 25 MB, it's going to be very hard for you to do that. So then they tell you, do you have the option of either putting it on a Google Drive or OneDrive, depending on which email you have. So again, that's because of that large quantity of data. Because it can't fit the email, it has to go somewhere else, right? So these are things that you have to think about. And a real world example, I think I've kind of given that, is you have to think about how you're going to manage that big data, but specifically how you're going to manage the security of that big data, and especially watching out for the applications that might be attracted to it, right? Because data attracts applications and services, because it's easier to move an application to a larger body of data than to move the data to the application. Now, when we're looking at locality, we're looking at CPU processing power and how it's brought to the data. So when we're looking at traditional models, so on traditional models, data is normally retrieved from disk and then brought to the CPU. I would say that a good way to think about locality is, the processing power is often moved to where the data resides, rather than moving it to moving the data to a processor. So an example is like, instead of like traveling to a distant water source every time you're thirsty, you can set a camp right next to it, making it easier to access the water whenever you need it. So instead of like let's say, instead of me traveling all the way to Edinburgh, for example, to hike, I think of a way to take a picture and put it in my laptop close by so I can still have access to that visual data. Similar thing that you can expect when thinking about locality. So when we're thinking about data compression, it's repackaging the data into a smaller size so that it occupies less space. So some of you guys might have used things like small PDF, where you're trying to reduce the size, compress the size of a image, a video, for example. And you're doing this because you want to be able to maybe send it quickly, faster, or you want to be able to use less network bandwidth so that it can send to it. You can send it to its intended recipient a lot quicker. So that's when data compression really comes to play. It's all about reducing files size, essentially. When we're talking about data duplication, so it's removing redundant information from storage media. So it breaks your data into chunks and then identify what's a duplicate and then removes the duplicate. Or it can replace the duplicate with pointers to a single copy of the data. So this again allows you to reduce your storage capacity. So reducing the storage space that you have, allowing you to be able to occupy that freed up storage with other important documents or other important data. Example here is, like you see, data duplication. It's removed all the duplicates from here, and then you have one single data block here, which is a great example if you want to understand it a little bit more. And then let me see what else we have. I believe it's capacity on demand, which is the last one. And that is on-demand self-service. So this is pay-as-you-go structure of the cloud. So it may cause your organization to lose sight of how much storage capacity is being consumed and therefore how much is being billed for. So with capacity on demand, it allows the users to get more storage whenever they need it. But one thing that you have to be, careful of with on demand is that being able to track it so that your organization is not spending money that it doesn't need to spend. So you have to watch out for unexpected costs that might occur when there's like a spike in demand. For example, the example I gave of like a viral TikTok video resulting in a spike in sales, which is resulting in an increase of data of how many customers' data you're collecting, and then again, ultimately increasing your cloud storage space. You want to be able to account for that when you can, which is why there's a lot of, especially if you're a business analyst, there's a lot of forecasting and projection that, okay, we expect at this time period, based on data we've gotten last year, that in October is going to be, or in November, there's going to be an uptake because of Black Friday, for example. So in this, with capacity on demand, you have to make sure that you're constantly monitoring your storage to make sure that you're not going over budget. And I'll say OpEx is also greatly impacted and can also be quite difficult to predict as well. So we're now going to go into availability zones. So when we're looking at availability zones, it deals with cloud service providers. So we are going to we're looking at how do cloud service providers divide the world into independent regions. So I would say like a good definition is cloud service providers structure their infrastructure by dividing the world into regions, and these regions further into availability zones. So they might separate it, with a good way to separate zones is like I say Africa, North America, South America, Europe, Australia, and Asia, for example. Then they will now go deeper into looking at, okay, how are these regions divided into availability zones? So zones that have their own independent data centers with power, cooling, and internet access. And then they're also going to look at data and services hosted within these zones that are near to anticipated consumers. And then finally, it then looks at zones it then looks at replication between zones that can provide redundancy and quicker consumer access. So a good way to think about when we're looking at availability zones is to think about 4 things. First one is region. We know that it divides regions into availability zones. Second one is availability zones, which are isolated locations within regions, each having its own independent data center equipped with power, cooling, and internet access. And then what is its purpose? Its purpose is that we use availability zones to ensure that data and services are hosted close to anticipated consumers. Why is this important? It's important because it then reduces latency and then improves speeds as a result of it. And then the 4th thing you then need to think about when looking at availability zone is replication. Data can be replicated between zones. Now you want to remove those replications for quicker access. Going back to our data management points that we looked at when we looked at replication and deduplications. So second thing that we're going to look at is geo-redundancy. Okay, so what is the definition? What is geo-redundancy? It's all about geo-redundancy is the replication of data between 2 or more regions, and you want to be able to remove these replications to be able to prevent, you want to be able to have these replications because you want to prevent your data loss due to large-scale disasters. So if we're going back to our previous point as to replication, the example I gave that, let's say you have your, a good one would be, let's say you have your master's degree or your bachelor's degree, for example, your A-levels. So with your A-level, you have a job interview, and each job interview is asking you for your qualifications. Now, because it's a very important document, you decide to create copies of your A-levels, and then you say, okay, I'm going to save one with my mom. I'm going to save, drop one with my friend, and I'm going to drop one at my office, and I'm going to drop one in my bag and car so I don't lose it. Why? Because let's say your friend's dog, for example, decided to eat a copy of your A-levels. With that disaster, you didn't account for that disaster. It was out of your hand. It was external circumstances. But because you already have different copies in different locations, you can always retrieve that data. Same thing here is when the data that the company has is being replicated and put into different regions. So maybe it's, it has like especially for working for a multinational company, let's say they have a center in Africa, Asia, and South America, they would have replications of those data in all 3 regions. So in case anything happens, they will always be able to retrieve the data back. And I would say that when we're looking at the key points of geo-redundancy is you're looking at 2 points, safety net and strategic placement. So the safety net deals with, it protects the data against natural or man-made disasters that might affect an entire region. So obviously with the example I gave was very small scale when I said your friend's dog ate your A-levels, but the impact that might have is if that was the only copy and you have a job interview the next day, you might, and that was the original copy, it will then impact your chances of getting the job, right? So if we're looking at this in a business setting, is if there's a large scale like an earthquake or fire, for example, because they have replications in different regions, they're always able to retrieve back the data, which then reduces the risk and the business impact that external disaster has had on the company. So for example, Amazon, a good real life example, Amazon and Microsoft have placed their data centers in major metropolitan areas that have the infrastructure to support a failover. So for example, Amazon has 4 regions in the US. They have a data center in Ohio, in North Virginia, in North Carolina, and Oregon, which means if there's a fire in Oregon, they still have 3 other locations that they can retrieve their data from. So going on to the next one, looks at disposable resources. So what is disposable resources and what is it about? So unlike traditional server deployments that involve huge capital expenditure on hardware, cloud infrastructure focuses on virtualized resources that can be quickly deployed and disposed of. So in this scenario, you want to think about, the life cycle of that hardware and was it maximized? You also want to think about the hardware represented by a large capital expenditure investment. And what was that? Now, if we're kind of looking at the two key points is looking at the traditional deployment, which is what we were operating before, and that includes expensive, specialized hardware with long life cycles, to where we are now with the cloud is a virtualized deployment model, which enables quicker deployment and destruction of virtual machines, as well as having an independent hardware life cycle as well. Now, a real world example would be, imagine you have disposable plates for a picnic. So using a disposable plate for your picnic instead of like an expensive china or expensive plate which might break or might hurt someone, and rather you use a disposable plate which is cost effective, it's cheaper, and it's something that you can discard quickly. So there is no significant financial loss, even though you're having to pay a bit extra to get those disposable plates. So that's kind of the same thing where we're looking at the concept of disposable resources. So we're also now going to go into alerts and login. So alerts informs administrators by email or other means of an event, specifically detailing the specific log file entries such as failures. So a definition I would say is, cloud systems are equipped with alert mechanisms and logs to keep track of activities and to notify administrators of potential issues that they might need to consider. So what are the key points when we're considering or we're looking at alerts and login? It's 4 key points. The first key point is alerts. So notifications sent like emails, when specific events and issues occur, you will get an alert. And like I said, those are like notifications. So they're sent like emails. The second one, when you're thinking about alerts and logging in, is login. So login is different from alerts because a login is a record of significant events on a server. So instead of getting a notification, you're getting a record of these events on a server. So this would be an example of this would be like reboots, software installations, and so forth. And then you have your third point, which deals with customizations. So administrators can decide what events or metrics are vital to monitor. And then the last one is built-in tools. And that deals with, both, if we're looking at the different operating systems, infrastructure systems, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but if we're looking at servers, for example, they're both the Windows server and the Linux server, especially when looking at virtual machines, they both have an intrinsic login mechanisms, which means cloud providers can offer specialized login tools for comprehensive monitoring. So a real world example of this is like, think of like an alarm, right? It goes off when something is wrong. So let's say you have, or even like a smoke detector. The smoke detector creates an alarm when it detects smoke, right? So the same thing that when there is an event, an issue, the system will alert the administrator, but also would log tracks of what actually occurred as well on the server. So similar to that concept is, I think, a great way for you to kind of understand how alerts and login works. So when looking at optimization, we're going to be looking at 3 parts of optimization. We're going to be looking at optimization, right sizing, optimization when it comes to auto scaling, which I think Francis also alluded to earlier. And we're also going to then look at load balancers. So when we're looking at right sizing, what is right sizing? So right sizing involves tailoring your virtual machine resources to best suit the specific workload requirements. So you are optimizing you are tailoring your virtual machines to your organization's demands and needs. And why is this important? It's important because of four key points when looking at right sizing. The first key point is adaptive. So you can either scale up, which means to increase your resources, or scale down, which is you decreasing your resources depending on your requirement. And your requirement might change at any time. Now, when we're looking at virtual machine, which is the second point, the second point is virtual machine specifications. So virtual machines are configured similarly to physical computers, but with parameters like your CPU, your RAM, your network capabilities, and your storage. These are things that you're going to think about when you are looking at your virtual machine specification. And then finally is flexibility. And why is it flexible? Because unlike your physical computer, when you're looking at virtual machine specifications, they can be modified with ease at any time to adapt to your changing needs and your changing demand. Now, imagine wearing adjustable clothes, right? As you grow, or change, the clothes can be resized to fit perfectly, depending on, whether you change in size and you grow or you change. These things can be altered. So, sorry, Chinere is raising her hands.
Okay, please. One of us said she has been waiting for you to let her in, please.
Let me see. Okay, I missed anything. All right. So going back into the optimization, we're now going to be looking at optimization auto-scaling. So optimization auto-scaling deals with, it automatically adjusts the number of virtual machines based on the current workload. So you don't have to think about it. It's not manual. In this case, it's automatic. Why? Because it looks at, what is your current demand and how does it adjust your current workload to kind of assist that current workload that you have. So the good thing about optimization auto-scaling is that it deals with elasticity, which means that because it's automatically adjusting the virtual machines to your workload, it's then able to, first of all, ensure cost efficiency, but also to ensure performance as well. So what are the key points that we need to think about when looking at auto-scaling? It's two parts. The first part is that it's dynamic. It's dynamic because it's based on real-time demand. So this is when virtual machines are either launched or terminated. The second thing is cost effective. So it ensures that you're not overpaying unnecessary resources because it's automatically adjusting to make sure that you only pay for what you use. Again, going back to the point of elasticity. And a good example of this is, let's say, it's like having a team of employees. During peak hours, you would have more staff working, and during off-peak hours, you might send some staff home. And maybe there's an automated system that does that, similar to kind of the cloud. That kind of deployment and changing of resources based on demand is being used with the optimization auto-scaling. So we're now going to go to the last part of optimization, which looks at load balancers. So when we're looking at load balancers, load balancers is all about ensuring that the workload is evenly distributed across multiple servers. And this is a great example because, as you can see, there's web server A, web server B, web server C, and is ensuring that the inbound requests are evenly distributed across these 3 different regions in this example. Now, with load balancers, going back to what I said, it's all about ensuring that the workload is evenly distributed. And this distribution occurs it normally occurs across multiple servers or regions, and it prevents any single server from being overwhelmed. Why? Because of that equal distribution among the different servers. Now, the key 2 points to think about when looking at load balancers is the first one is equitable distribution, which I've kind of mentioned a lot. And that is because it direct incoming network traffic, which you can see here, across multiple servers. Well, it distributes that equally. So none of these servers feel overwhelmed because they all share the equal weight. And also the second point that you can consider when looking at load balancers is collaboration. Why? Because it often works hand in hand with auto scaling to ensure efficiency. So when we're looking at load balancers, it normally works in conjunction with the previous point of auto scaling. And this two work hand in hand because it increases efficiency. Now, I would say with load balancers, think about those 2 points, collaboration and equitable distribution. With auto scaling, think about dynamic and cost effective. And then when you're thinking about right sizing, think about adaptive VM specification and then flexibility. Now, when we are looking at cloud managed service providers, this is all about, I'll say a great way to define this is third-party companies that specialize in managing cloud IT operations for other organizations. And we know the 3 big ones, which are Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS. Now, why do you need to outsource? Like, why does the management of cloud needs to be outsourced to other organizations? Well, there's 3 reasons. The first one is expertise on demand. These companies maintain expert staff who handle cloud administrations, which can then be outsourced to different companies, helping them while they have their cloud migration. Now, the second key point and another key reason why organizations tend to go for cloud managed service providers is the services that these providers offer. So these kind of services ranges from remote monitoring to administration to configuration to even security as well. You as an organization don't have to think about all those things. Why? Because the cloud managed service providers handle those parts. They handle remote monitoring, they handle administration, and they handle configuration, which allows your company to not think about those things and focus its resources in other places that are beneficial to the company. And the third reason why people tend to use cloud managed service providers is that it's attractive to small and medium-sized organizations. Why? Because they may not have the budget to have a full-time cloud administration team. And because they don't have, the resources to have that kind of infrastructure, they're more likely to go for cloud managed service providers. Even larger companies actually don't want to take on those responsibilities and tend to use cloud managed service providers as well. So again, it depends. Unless the organization has a lot of money to actually invest in creating its own infrastructure and its own expertise, they are going, if they don't have those resources, then having a cloud managed service provider is going to be an ideal source of option. Now, let's have like a recap of everything that we've kind of discussed. So a recap of Cloud Essentials when we're looking at 4B is replication. Replication is the act of creating exact copies of data and placing them in multiple locations for redundancy and accessibility. So it's like keeping multiple copies of a book in different libraries. If one gets lost, the other copies are available. When we're then talking about availability zones, these are independent, isolated areas within a cloud service provider region, each equipped with its own data center. So imagine regions as different states in a country and availability zones as cities within those states. So in the UK, it could be like England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. And then the availability zones within these regions would be like London, Kent, Bradford, Leeds, all those things, because there are cities within those states. Then when we're looking at geo-redundancy, it's the practice of duplicating data between 2 or more separate cloud service provider regions to ensure data availability and resilience. So it's like having backup homes in different countries. If anything happens to one home, you still have another place to go to. And then number 4, we're looking at, disposable virtual servers. These are servers in the cloud that are virtual machines that can be effortlessly spun up or terminated based on the needs of the organization. So consider virtual machines as temporary rooms in a hotel. You can book more rooms when you have guests, and you can release them once they leave. And then when we're looking at alerts and login, so alerts are, ways to notify administrators about predefined events, while right sizing is about adjusting a virtual machine resource to align with its workload perfectly. So alerts are like an alarm clock. They wake you up at crucial moments, while right sizing is adjusting the size of your shoes to the right fit, or adjusting the size of a dress to fit you perfectly. Now, when we're looking at auto-scaling is when you automatically adjust the number of active virtual machines based on the current demand. And so imagine auto-scaling as an elevator. It brings in more lifts when there are more people and reduces them when there are fewer people. So it's only used at certain times. So that then makes it more cost effective. Now, finally, when we look at cloud managed service providers, these are third-party companies specializing in managing cloud IT operations for businesses. So think of them as caretakers of a big mansion, for example. This big mansion is akin to cloud infrastructure. Now, they ensure that everything runs smoothly, so you don't have to worry about daily chores. That's essentially what a cloud service provider does. It deals with the managing and maintaining of the cloud infrastructure for companies. Now, who benefits from cloud managed service providers? It's small to medium-sized companies. Why? Because they don't have that in-house expertise or budget for a full-time cloud admin team. And because of that, they will be outsourcing the expertise from well-known and established cloud service providers. So that's for part B. I think the answer already came, but we're going to go through this quite quickly. So I want to know what you guys think. The answer was already there, but let me know in the chat. Number 4.2, will your organization engage in a cloud managed service provider to provide day-to-day administration for your company's cloud infrastructure? And if so, what advantages would a managed service provider provide for your company? So going back to the benefits of utilizing a cloud service managed provider like AWS, Google Cloud, what benefit can your organization actually have by utilizing the services of Google Cloud? Let me know in the chat. Shade says peace of mind. For sure, there will definitely be peace of mind. I like that answer. What else? Susie says access to expert knowledge and skills. Sasha says buying cheaper than buying a load of tin.
Resourcefully.
Resourcefully, I think that was Francis. Augustina says skilled support personnel. Cassandra says they have the infrastructure already set up and will be able to help if anything goes wrong. I'll say you guys are all right. So I think a lot of people talked about the expertise that they will get. Also infrastructure, they already have the infrastructure set up. So if you're a small to medium-sized organization, why would you spend thousands and thousands of, or even millions and sometimes even billions of pounds trying to create your own infrastructure when you could just outsource it? I see Kemi also says increases productivity. And yes, it does, especially if we look back into the characteristics of cloud. And also then think about how those characteristics play into the services that cloud service providers provide, then shows you that there's definitely going to be an increase in productivity, and also in making it cost effective as well, because you only pay what you use. So for the next one, a business manager has heard that you are advising the cloud deployment team on business concerns. She reads an article about the cloud, and that indicated that businesses will no longer require daily backups because all the data will be stored in the cloud, and cloud service providers have redundant systems. She's concerned about her department's data and believes it should still be backed up. How might you address her concerns? What do we think? I will also, sorry, I can't see participants. So in case anyone wants to talk, I'll be able to see you as well as see the chat at the same time. So does anyone want to give it a go, whether typing the answer or saying the answer?
You're going to tell her that it's an automatic online storage that doesn't need backups.
Okay, I know that's a good one. Thank you, Francis. And yeah, I think it goes back into the point of benefits as well. Does anyone else want to go? Or if I say, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
isn't it if they have a redundant system, doesn't that mean that they already have a backup?
So repeat that question, Ifama. Was that a question?
No, I was saying it says that the cloud service providers have redundant systems. So that means they already have backups of the data that's being stored.
Yes.
Is my sound a bit wonky that way?
No, you're right. You're right. And Chinnery also kind of adds to that when she says redundancy helps in a failover, essentially. And yeah, that pretty much
You
answers.
can tell her about the CDNs that help with geographical access, and not needing to back it up at every geographical location. So
Yes, because the infrastructure is already there with the cloud service provider. Because even remember when we're looking at the example of regions and let me go back to it. Oh, my mind went blank. Regions and availability zones specifically. That's what I was looking for. Amazon has 4 regions in the US, and they also have different data centers if we're looking at UK and other countries as well. So because of that, it means that they have data backups in case anything goes wrong, and they have data backups that are close to the locality of the different regions as well. So going back into when we're looking at data management, it would be locality as well as the redundancy as well. So overall, all these things ensure that there is data backups, which are necessary, a necessary part of deployments for cloud service providers. Why? Because backup satisfies industry requirements for archiving, version control, rollbacks, and will be implemented for all businesses. So it does allow them to have peace of mind. Like Francis said, companies don't have to worry about that backup data, although I still think even if you're utilizing the cloud, there should always be the company's own backup data, as well as the one that exists within the cloud. There should be a physical data or data in other servers as well, just kind of reduce the risk. But thank you, everyone. I see Afi also talks about, does this have anything to do with equity, equal distribution of data? Not entirely. It more deals with the backup of data, as well as data centers and the locality of the data backups that exist as well. So going back, remember this is part of the data management. Does anyone remember what data gravity was that they want to share, the definition of that?
Moving large chunks of data.
Oh, who's that?
Francis.
Thank you, Francis.
I think, yeah, the more data gravity can be defined as, okay, can I define it? No, but let me just explain. It has to do with the weight of the data. The more the data, the more difficult it becomes to move. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Okay, thank you, Kemi. Thank you for your contribution. I just want to double check that I have not missed anyone who else wants to go. Augustina, did you want to talk as well? I don't know if you wanted to contribute. Okay, I'll say that as a no. So looking at the chat, Cassandra says as data grows, it can be harder to move around. Shade says data can only be available in specific zones. And Susie says managing the security of the data. And Sasha says gravity equals attracting smaller objects to the biggest object. Apologies to the physicists in the chat. So for big data, the service oriented around the big data other than the other way around. Yes. So looking at the answer, I'll say with Sasha's point, it's not the service, but it's the application. So just change that word, then you have the right answer. So 4 points when we're thinking about data gravity. The first point is that data is only accessible in specific availability zone. And I think Shade mentioned that. And it's all about providing the proper storage type for the data. And it deals with the concentration of data, which tends to attract, like I said, keyword applications and services and tend to be difficult to move. And then the final one is the units of replication for data, So good job, everyone. You guys answered it well. And thank you, Kemi, and thank you, Francis, for your contributions as well. Now going on, I don't know if that's the last question. Okay. So this is a multiple choice question. So which of the following best describes the availability zone? Do we think it's A, B, or C? A, B, C, or D?
B.
B. Okay, I'm seeing lots of B's. That is the right answer. Regions do contain multiple availability zones. So congratulations, everyone. And you found it as well out loud. So good job, everybody. So which of the following best describes right sizing? What do we think the answer is? A, B, C, D. What does everyone think? Remember optimization with right sizing? Okay, I'm seeing C. Shade, Susie, Kiana, Cassandra, Elizabeth, C. Congratulations, you guys are right. Yes, it's all about adjusting the specification of virtual machines to closely match its utilization. Now, what do we think with auto scaling? And again, we're still looking at optimization because if we remember,
C.
C, okay. Thank
B.
you, Fran.
Huh?
Did you say C, Francis? I don't know. Was that you that said C?
Sorry. Yeah, I was the one. But I don't think I'm right.
It's okay. We're all learning. I think Kiana, Sade, Cassandra says B, Elizabeth says B. And you guys are right. It's all about automatically increasing the number of servers available to manage a task. So good job, everyone. And we're now going to move into DevOps in the cloud. So we have 30 minutes. I might breeze through these a little bit. So if I am too fast, let me know. I'll be looking at the chats. So in DevOps in the cloud, we're going to be looking at how do we explain DevOps within a cloud environment. So what is DevOps when we're thinking about it? DevOps is a combination of development and operations aimed at improving collaboration. So it's all about enhancing deployments and achieving automation. So I would say the three key takeaways that we have to consider is unification. So when we're looking at DevOps, it merges the development and operations team to enhance collaboration. The second point is efficiency. So it aims to reduce the development lifecycle, which you can see, which I think if you Google it, you can see what the development lifecycle looks like. But essentially, it reduces the development life cycles to achieve a quicker software release, but also deals with how to constantly improve the iteration of that software based on user feedback as well. And which leads me into adaptation. Because it's adaptable, it facilitates adaptability to change swiftly and efficiently, which is why they are able to make iterations to a software based on user feedback, because the structure of DevOps allows that quick process, that quick adaptability, and that quick iteration. So a good analogy when I think about DevOps is that it's like a well-rehearsed orchestra where every musician, which in this case would be your developer and operation staff, know their part and plays in harmony with others to create a beautiful symphony, which in this example would be a software. So when we're thinking about the second part, which is continuous integration, and continuous delivery. So a good way, or you might see the acronym in the exam, which would be CI for continuous integration and CD for continuous delivery. So CI/CD encompasses automated building, testing, and deploying of applications by promoting swift and consistent, as well as efficiency delivery of software. So there are two components. When we're talking about continuous integration, we're looking at how do we automate processes of integrating code changes from multiple contributions into a single project. While when we're looking at continuous delivery, it focuses on automating the delivery of applications to selected infrastructure environments. So imagine a factory assembly line, which would be CI in this case, where products are assembled and tested quickly and consistently. Once they're ready, they're automatically packaged and shipped to customers, which in this example would be continuous delivery. So as you can see, continuous integration, you have build process, test process, merge process, and then you have your continuous delivery, which is all about release process and then deploy process. And then it goes all over again. So moving on, because I alluded to infrastructure, we're going to be looking at infrastructure as code. What does that mean? Infrastructure, or if we're looking at the acronym, which is IAC, IAC is a key component of DevOps that allows managing and provisioning of infrastructure through machine-readable script files. So rather than through physical hardware configuration, it's done through machine-readable script files. So the key takeaways when you're looking at infrastructure as a code is three things. Automation. Why? Because it enables automatic deployment of infrastructure And by doing that, it then reduces manual errors. The second thing is consistency. It guarantees similar and repeatable deployments. While the last one is efficiency. Why? Because it reduces the time and effort required in a traditional manual process. So think of IAC as a recipe book. Each recipe, which would be a script, contains specific specific instructions to prepare a dish, which in this case would be an infrastructure, ensuring that it tastes the same every time it's made. So think of, when you're thinking about recipe book, think of the recipe book as IAC, think of the recipe within the book as your script, and the script will contain specific instructions on how to prepare a dish, and the dish in this case would be your infrastructure. So ensuring that it has consistency in its management and deployment process as well. So we're now going to move to the next one, which is templates. So what are templates within a infrastructure as a code scenario? So templates are predefined scripts that contain configurations for deploying infrastructure, applications, or services automatically. So the key takeaways that you would need to consider, and I think a good way to also remember templates is three things. The first one is simplicity. So templates makes the deployment process straightforward and user-friendly, right? The second element that you want to consider is on demand. So it allows users to deploy resources without waiting for manual intervention, because it's on demand. And the third point is consistency. Remember the recipe example, because you want the dish to taste the same every time you make it. In this case, the template ensures consistency because it ensures that every deployment is identical, reducing inconsistencies and also reducing errors as well. So for example, a developer can quickly deploy a test server using a predefined template. Now, this eliminates the waiting time and potential inconsistencies involved in manual setups when you're just figuring out. So instead of trying to figure out how to do the script, what instructions to use, there's already a ready-made template, which makes it easy and faster for you to deploy it. So the other one we're going to look at is configuration management. So configuration management ensures that the system settings are consistent and maintained across all nodes in an infrastructure. So this means that the automation and the orchestration plays a significant role in streamlining this. Now, there are 2 points for you to consider when looking at configuration management. The first point is automation, the capability to perform tasks without human intervention. And then the second point is orchestration. So that is coordinating multiple automated tasks to achieve a specific outcome or a specific process. So consider a symphony, for example. Orchestration. Oh, sorry, I see something in the chat. Okay. So going back.
Sorry, somebody is waiting for you to let her in as well.
I think I've allowed the person in. That was Blessing.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So going back to analogy, consider a symphony. So that's when orchestration is like a conductor, ensuring that every musician task plays in harmony. Automation ensures that every note, which will be the action, is played correctly without missing a beat. And this is the same thing when we're looking at configuration management. So now going to the next element of upgrading and patching. The process of applying updates to application or operating systems to fix vulnerabilities and rectify programming errors or roll out new features. That is what I would say is the definition of patching. So patching, just repeating, patching and upgrading is the process of applying updates to applications or operating systems to fix vulnerability and rectify programming errors or to roll out new features. Now, what are the two key takeaways? The first one is importance. So patching actually helps you to address potential security flaws. Why? Because it ensures that your system remains safe. The second point is continuous delivery. This is that DevOps practice can be used to automate the patching and updating process. Now think of patching like updating your smartphone. If you do it via different periods, you get updates to fix bugs. So this would allow you again to fix your security and also allows you to access new features that are being introduced. So the next point that we're going to look at is API integration. So what is an API integration? It is understanding that APIs, which are application programming interfaces, that they enable different software applications to communicate with each other by exposing certain functionalities. So two things to think about when looking at API integration is versatility and microservices. So when we're looking at versatility, is understanding that APIs are used across various platforms, from web applications to monitoring software. They can be used within these different platforms. The second point is microservices. And that's understanding that modern applications are built as a collection of loosely coupled, independently deployable services, which often communicate using APIs. So again, this brings back what we discussed last week with microservices, but also shows you how it's linked with an API integration. Now, consider API as translators. Let's say your APIs are translators in a United Nations meeting. They ensure that representatives, which are applications from different countries, which would be platforms, can understand each other. So essentially, it's the glue between applications and platforms and ensuring that applications and platforms are able to communicate with each other. Now, it moves us to our final point before we go into our recap, which is testing in a QA environment. Now, testing within a QA environment involves three different practices, right? The first practice is sandboxing, and that is how do you test applications? How do you test applications in an isolated environment? And this is ensuring that they don't affect the production setup. And then the second one is load testing. So these are applications that are tested with a simulated load to confirm that they've worked correctly. Now, the last one is regression testing. So these are applications, modifications, which must not break existing features of the application. So a good way to think about these ones is sandboxing. Think about it as testing applications in separate environments to ensure that they don't affect production setup. Then you have load testing, which is all about stress testing applications by simulating real-world user load. And then regression testing, which is all about checking if newly implemented changes affect the existing features of the application. Now, a recap of everything that we've discussed today, especially when we're looking at topic 4C, is the essence of DevOps. So we looked at the essence of DevOps, which is understanding that DevOps bridges the gap, the traditional gap between software development, IT and IT operations by promoting a better collaboration between these two teams, which then leads to faster outcomes. Then we also looked at continuous integration and continuous delivery. So when we're looking at CI/CD, it's all about streamlining the software release process by enabling frequent updates and ensuring quality. Now, the key components, again, when we're looking at continuous integration, is that it automatically integrates code changes ensuring that they are built and tested promptly. When it looks at continuous delivery, it's all about packages. It packages the built software and readies it for deployment. So it makes the release consistent and fast. Now, when we're looking at the topic of infrastructure as a code, understand that infrastructure as a code uses scripts and automation to deploy and manage infrastructure. And this is important because it ensures consistency, speed, and repeatability. Now, when we are looking at orchestration, it's that orchestrating the deployment means coordinating various automated tasks to deploy a service seamlessly without human intervention. Now, finally, when we're looking at testing, we're looking at sandboxing and regression. So sandbox testing is all about testing applications in an isolated environment. And because it's in an isolated environment, it means that there will be no effect on actual production systems. Then you have your regression testing, which is after making changes and adding features, you're ensuring that the existing functionalities remain unaffected and operate as intended. So we're now going to go to the questions and then we'll close today's sessions. So I know that some of you guys have already seen it, but to make it quickly, because we only have about 14 minutes, can you guys answer me, what role does DevOps play within your organization? Does anyone share?
Simulation of continuous development, delivery, and testing.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Anyone else? Oh, let me put the chat so I can see. All right. Okay. And yeah, you're right. So answer was varied, but Francis is right. It's all about the development team and IT operations collaborating together. So that it's an easier collaboration, easier. You're able to iterate and improve your systems a lot quickly. And I think Augustina said automation and orchestration of development, which is also right. So thank you both for your answers. Now, the second question, going back to continuous integration and continuous delivery of software. For incremental releases, how does this impact you as an employee?
Are you asking us for the advantage and disadvantages or just good impacts?
I think the advantage and disadvantage will play into it, but it's probably looking at the impact as an employee. How would it affect your work as an employee?
Reduced workload because it's automated.
Thank you, Francis. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to move on.
I'm also guessing faster patching the software is faster and also catching up with market needs because of the faster delivery and everything.
That is correct, because of the iterations. So, oh, I think I missed something in the chat. Increase efficiency from Chinyere. So there are different ways, because I think, it gets a bit complex when we work with employees. So some employees may not like the sudden software change because they have to learn something new. Others will appreciate it because they don't have to wait long for a desired features. And some employees may also appreciate that there is no significant, loss of time. So like Francis said, of like being able to focus, have a reduced workload, some employees would appreciate that. And that also links into increased efficiency, which Chinere said. But I think when thinking about employees, we all know that people are very, very extremely complex. So you would have a range of reaction to it. I would say this question deals with cultural change, which is one thing you might realize, especially if you like you're working in a cloud migration. A part of the cloud migration will deal with that people aspect is how do you get the staff to have a buy-in to this new idea, a buy-in to this new tech? How do you get them to utilize the new tech properly so that the organization can actually access, utilize the services and the benefits that the cloud service provider would give? So it's very complex, but it's understanding that humans are complex and there will be a range of different emotions to the CI and CD. So going back to multiple choice questions, which of the following best describes infrastructure as a code? A, B, C, or D? What do we think? Let me know in the chat. Okay, Sasha says C. Oh, I put the answer, I didn't even know. Yes, the answer is C. It uses machine readable files to define configurations for automated deployment. So thank you, Sasha, and thank you, AV. You both were right on that. So which of the following best describes the difference between orchestration and automation? I'm going to make sure I don't click on it this time. Okay. Shade says B.
B.
Francis says B. Thank you. AV says B. All right. Let's see the answer. You guys are all right. So orchestration refers to a combination of automated tasks. So which of the following best describes sandbox testing? A, B, C, or D? What do we think? Okay. Deborah says A. Shade says A. Susie A. Elizabeth says A.
A.
And Francis says A. Yes, you guys are all right. It's all about testing new services or applications in a separate space from the production environment. Now, this is a true or false question, so it's going to be a little bit different. So regression refers to the testing to a simulated demand placed on a system to confirm that an application responds acceptably. What do we think? True or false? Oh, okay. Sasha says true.
The first few parts are sounding true, then the last part is kind of, I don't know.
So you're in the middle.
The way I see regression is like when you make changes and want to see if it's adhering to those changes or if it's having some glitches. I don't really know. Simulated demand. Don't know.
That's fine. And Deborah says true, Susie says true, and Chinere says true. The answer is false. It's false because if you look at the end, so regression testing refers to simulated demand placed on a system to confirm that an application responds acceptably. If we go back to our notes, wait, I want to explain this point a little bit more. So if we go back to our notes, regression testing is all about checking if newly implemented changes affect the existing features of an application. So it's not about confirming whether the application responds acceptably, it's ensuring that the new changes that they've implemented doesn't affect the existing features that currently exist. So that's why it's false. And Sasha says load, not regression. So load testing is stress testing applications by simulating real world user load. Exactly, Chinere. So that is not regression testing, essentially. Because regression testing is looking, does these implemented changes affect existing features? So I'll continue to play from the current slide. And then I believe that this is the last one. So understanding DevOps in the cloud. So a developer is aware that you are advising the cloud deployment team on business matters, and she asks whether the cloud deployment will permit a load testing for an application that she's developing. What would you tell her? I remember we just discussed load testing. What do we think? This is the final question. I know that we are tired, but we have 5 minutes. What do you all think about this question?
We tell her that we will test in sandboxes to determine if it's going to work very well before transferring it to before deploying it to the cloud.
Okay, so your answer is sandboxing before deploying it. Okay, thank you, Francis. Deborah said yes, we can in sandbox. Okay, does anyone else want to go before I discuss the answer?
Is a VM a sandbox? I'm thinking, what's the difference between a VM and a sandbox? Are they not supposed to be the same thing? Or are all VMs sandboxes? Or are all sandboxes VMs of a kind? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I want to ask.
So a sandbox is a virtual machine used to run a software
Okay.
testing environment.
So all sandboxes are VMs?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Chinere says is basic and control testing. So essentially, you guys are right. So it's cloud deployments that easily support the ability to conduct load testing for applications. So you can utilize sand testing as well as load testing as well. So you guys are right in your answers. So we're going to look at topic D next week. But we're going to end here. Thank you all.
Please, I have a question. Sorry, don't go.
Okay, so
hello.
Hi, Francis.
Yeah. I find it hard to differentiate between an API and what's that again? Orchestrations and APIs.
Okay.
Yeah, like APIs used for orchestrations, or are they just protocols that exist in orchestration steps?
Wait, sorry, I'm seeing someone's written something. So, orchestration is a part of an API, is a type of an API. So an API is a application. Wait a minute.
So you're saying that an API helps with the process of orchestration?
Yes. So an API is a application programming interface. Now,
oh, yeah. Okay.
While
Sorry.
Oh, Sasha also sent a link, which was quite helpful. Thank you, Sasha. While API orchestration is the process of integrating and coordinating multiple APIs from different sources into a coherent system.
Thank you.
Now, Offerman says, can we discuss the email from Seidea? Okay. What specifically about the email?
You sent an email today. My email says that we have to submit the project tomorrow at 4 p.m.
So that was a bit of an oversight. So the idea was it's still the 8th of October, but what was said was that tomorrow we're having a meeting with Cylon which ends at 3:30. So we'll let everyone know by 4 p.m. tomorrow whether the date would be the 8th or the 15th, which I believe everybody asked for an extension, a 1-week extension last week. So we'll know after our meeting with Cylon tomorrow whether that extension will be approved.
Hi.
Hi, Zainab.
Yeah, sorry, I have to talk. I didn't wait till you make me talk. Even if we can get the 15th, because it might not be easy for them to go through everybody's submission and give feedbacks. Can we get something in between, like 13th or 12th?
Get any of
I'll be able to see how much extension we can give everyone.
What did you say?
I said I'll be able to know from tomorrow's meeting.
No.
I'll negotiate to see how much
All
extension.
right. Thank you. Just help us get days.
Sorry, I was just wondering if we did get the extension, does that change the graduation date, or you just still come to the graduation?
It doesn't change the graduation date because that's now being sponsored by Sage, so that will be set. But it does mean that instead of the notification on the graduation date, people will be notified via email a week or 2 weeks after.
Yeah, and then just to be clear as well, is next week the last session then?
Yes, next week is the last training session. And then,
Oh,
and Sasha, if you're not from London, we will be emailing for us to provide bursary. So you have a bursary of up to £50 for travel if you're coming from outside London.
Okay.
okay, sorry to say this again. Please, what time is the graduation, please? What time to what time?
So we are working on the timing. It's between 12 to 6, but we might change it to between 1 and 4 p.m.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Oh yeah, and then with that, would you be able to join online, or is it just in person?
So it's in person. I'm going to confirm to see if there's a live streaming capabilities, but I doubt that there would be.
Okay. Okay, so so next week is the last session, and then we would have, I think, then the week after, if you do get the extension, we'll submit the assignment, and then that's it really, and then yeah.
Essentially, and I think we'll be in touch with you once we know who the winners are for the full scholarship, where we'll give you your exam code.
Okay.
The exams have already been booked, the exam batches have already been booked, so we'll share that with the top 12. And then those who haven't been selected as the top 12, you do have the option of kind of paying for the bootcamp at a discounted rate through us.
Is that booking for the voucher code?
Yeah, that's the booking for the voucher. As discussed in the interview, if you're part of the top 12, you are required to do your certification within 3 months, exam within 3 months. If you're not part of the 12 and you pay for it yourself via the discount route, then you do have a year to do your certification exam.
And if you do get through, will you get additional support to do that exam within 3 months, or you just go with what you've learned so far?
So you go with what you learned so far.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Shade, I see you have your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, depending on whether the deadline is on the 8th or the 15th, just because I haven't seen it anywhere, is there a time of like the latest time that we can upload our work, or email our work over?
It's 11:59 p.m. on that day.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you.
No worries. And yeah, if does anyone have any question? Susie, okay, you don't have to register for the grad. Everyone's name has already automatically been sent to Sage.
Okay. Would you consider Luton outside of London?
Yeah, that could be outside London. We can support you.
Okay.
We can support
You
you.
gotta ask. You gotta ask.
No worries. We can support you. With the just one more thing as well. Next week we're gonna have a speaker from Cloudflare. I'm gonna send the details soon. And there is also, oh, sorry, this week actually. And there's also an event on the 4th of October, which I will, is it the 4th? I think on the 5th of October by Cloudflare, which is the Black Women in Tech. So in case anyone's interested in working for Cloudflare, I'll put it on the chat anyway for you guys to see.
Is that a recruitment fair?
It's not a recruitment fair. It's not like the Lloyds banking one.
Oh,
But I will also be sharing a job that was sent to us by one of our members who works at Wise. Is a GRC role. So I'll be sending that and also sending the Seidea member that sent it so that you guys can contact her on LinkedIn.
Where would you be sending all of this, please, so I can look up for it?
I'm much
yeah,
interested
job
also.
board. I think we should have a job board, just a job board where there is a job.
I'm telling you, a job board on Geneva or something. Let's know where we are clicking.
So that we don't look at the whole
Seriously, because we're in the job market.
That's definitely a good idea, actually. I can forward the job stuff this evening.
Okay.
The start and the Cloudflare event I will put this evening. Details about the speaker will be sent tomorrow. I just need him to send me his bio for me to then send to you guys. But I'll share his LinkedIn.
Please, one last question. I'm sorry. So what do you advise us? So as someone that just finished this course, do you advise us to do CISA? Or do you advise us to do cloud practitioner and cloud architect?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it depends on your career route. If you want to go more in the cloud route, then I would suggest specializing in one of the cloud service providers. So whether it's Google Cloud, Azure, or AWS. If you want to be more of an auditor within the cloud space, I would recommend getting the CISA, but also looking at the standardizations for cloud because you want to be able to get certifications around that as well if you're specializing within the cloud from GRC route.
Do you know what standard? Sorry, okay, speak.
Oh, sorry, did I miss?
No, it's okay. I want to hear what you say.
Oh, so that's what I would do if I'm going through like the GRC route. If I want to go more on the technical route, no, let's say you don't want to specialize with a cloud service
Oh,
provider.
there's Joe.
CompTIA Cloud Plus is like the next step up, which is more of like technical. That's when you be actually operating within a cloud environment and you be using labs and things like that. So that might be the next step up if you're looking for that. So I think you have one question. I think I'm going to take 2 questions and close today's session. So the next question, were you asking about the standardized cloud standardizations?
Yeah.
I don't know all within my brain now, but I know that NCSC has some good standardizations, and I know that there are cloud security standards within the ISO. If you're working within finance, there will be some PCI DSS parts that lead to the cloud, and also GDPR also leads to the cloud to a certain degree as well. So those would be off top recommendations that I have for that, but definitely research further than what I have said. And I'm going to take the last question, which I believe is from Sade, because I see your hands up, and then I'll close today's session.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, the event that you said was happening on Thursday, is that, because we also have a session on Thursday, does that affect, is it on at the same time? Do you know?
So I know that the cloud, wait, let me check for that for you now, actually, because I said that at the top of my head. So at the top of my head, let me find information. So the event, oh, unfortunately, the event will clash. It's going to be at 6:30 p.m., but there is an online version
Okay.
as well as an in-person version. So it will clash on the Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it would. Thank you for checking.
No worries. No, that should be on me, actually. I forgot on the date. Well, what I will say is, like, the purpose of this bootcamp is for you guys to get jobs. So I've also shared the opportunity. If you can't make it because you want to attend the event, let me know via email, and then I will send your names to her, and then you guys can watch the recorded version. So if you want to come on Thursday session, that's up to you. We're still gonna have someone from Cloudflare coming on Wednesday as well. But if you want to go to network, we're not gonna hold you here, so you can go to that as well, because this session will be recorded. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you, staff. Thank you.
Will you send us stuff after we graduate?
Sorry, Francis, what did you say?
Will you keep sending us stuff after we graduate? Or are you going to just leave us?
I'm not gonna leave you guys. I'm gonna share on the wider part, we will be sharing more of, like, job opportunities. There. That's definitely something we want to utilize. We're just expanding our volunteering team to be able to get some more content on the platform. But we won't be leaving you guys, don't worry.
Steph, I'm so sorry. I know you said one more question. I'm so sorry. Just one more thing, just quickly. Sorry. You know, just in case you get through to the scholarship, right? And then you've got 3 months to do the exam. What if you don't want to do it in 3 months? Or you have no choice?
I think you have no choice because it's linked to the contract.
Oh, okay.
And
And then
I would say that if you get it and you don't feel confident in doing it within 3 months, then I think the actual exam is like £60. So you might decide to pay the exam and then do it within a year. So you have the option. And then based on, because they're going to give us people ranked, then you can just give up your space to someone else.
oh, okay. And then because it's like with the Salesforce exam, like if you don't pass, then that's it. You just got to book for another one. You just keep.
You can book for another one, but what we will help anyone who kind of, maybe you get the full scholarship and you don't pass, you do have the option to come to us, and then we can always give you discount, the discounted price.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone again, and I will stop the session here and send you guys the Cloudflare details, and I think I was supposed to send something else, but I think it was mostly the Cloudflare details.
And the job opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jenny. My mind went blank. And the job opportunity, I will send that
the job
now on the platform. But yeah, I'll send that now on the platform, and then the video should go up tomorrow, latest Wednesday. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday, if you can make it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.